Happy Tuesday! Quick look into my day of doing these things. I now do the day's questions myself, basically first thing in the morning, which is great for not forfeiting, but bad for not missing the occasional question that a more, let's say, awake version of me would probably have been able to pull. I'm a new dad. Extreme morning person is kind of my persona right at the moment. Anyway, let's get to it! Question 1. Who was hired away from NBC's Today Show in 1976 to serve as co-anchor with Harry Reasoner on ABC's flagship nightly news program, becoming the first woman to serve in such a role in American television history? Barbara Walters is a titan of American media. I can only imagine the crap she had to put up with breaking through those barriers in the 60s and 70s. Harry Reasoner was apparently awful to her when they first shared the anchor's chair in 1976. Dude, no one would ever remember you except for the fact that this lady took your chair away. Groundbreaking women in the 70s famously did not get a lot of support in the mainstream, and the only airtime they got tended to be at least a little mocking. You mean a girl can read the news? They're words. Women are allowed to learn to read now. It ain't magic. Signed, a white dude. Reading words. Question 2. What World War II battle, part of the Allied effort to retake the Philippines, is widely considered the largest naval engagement in history and recorded the first planned use of Japanese kamikaze attacks? There are World War II buffs, and then there are World War II buffs. I never would have guessed that the correct answer was the Battle of Leyte Gulf, and apparently very few people did. The most popular wrong answer, the Battle of Midway, got more than double the number of correct guesses that the actual answer did. Is World War II fading into history now that it's passing out of living memory? Soon, no one who served in that war will still be with us, and these questions, these stories, will be preserved only in books and documentaries, of which there are admittedly tons. My father has my grandfather's diaries from when he served in the Air Force in the Pacific Theater, and there's a lot of stuff that's been blacked out of them. I'll go through those at some point. I got this one wrong, I guess. Guadalcanal. Question 3. With the exception of the first year during the 2014 season when Ohio State defeated Oregon, every instance of the college football playoff national championship game has featured one of two teams, and on 3 occasions, both of those teams. Identify those 2 teams. Only the school names are required. College football. One of those topics where if you know this, you know it cold, and if you don't, you have no idea. The way some grown-ups will go all in on the fandom of a university they, in many cases, never themselves attended just baffles me. These athletes are unpaid. They're children. Being a fan of a professional team is one thing, but college sports, please help me understand. Anyway, Alabama seemed like a safe bet just because Nick Saban is occasionally in the news, and like many college football coaches, he's the highest paid government employee in his state by far. Anyway, like Steely Dan says, they call Alabama the Crimson Tide. Call me Deacon Blues. Question 4. What pop group, who had hits in 2009 with 1901 and Listomania, has a name that would fit in a list with the names of the bands who recorded More Than a Feeling and Feelin' Stronger Every Day? Well, More Than a Feeling was the band Boston's first ever mega hit, and Stronger Every Day was one of the big orchestral arena rock hits from the band Chicago. So even if you've never heard of the band Phoenix, if you know anything about 70s rock, you at least know you're looking for a group that's the name of a U.S. city, which narrows it down. I mean, I'm sure every city has had a band named after them that might have done well, at least locally. I grew up in Toronto in the 80s, and there was a band called Toronto who had a hit with a song that went, your daddy don't know what your mama's gonna do tonight. It was the 80s. What do you want? They were fine. They were fine. They were fine. Question 5. CBC is the abbreviation for a standard diagnostic laboratory test used to detect anemia, infections, and various other medical disorders. What do the letters in CBC stand for? Never heard of this? Me neither. Read the question 75 or 80 times, like I did, and you start to realize that it sure sounds like kind of a blood test. So the B in CBC probably stands for blood. So something blood something. You might get to something blood count, but to get that first C, it's going to be a guess. Or someone you know has gone to med school, and so they know it properly. Or maybe you're a doctor. Who knows? That happens. Begrudgingly, this is probably a good question. And finally, question 6. 18 largely barren volcanic isles, along with hundreds of islets and skerries situated in the North Atlantic between the Shetland Islands and Iceland, make up, since 1948, what self-governing region of Denmark? Your first thought when seeing the phrase self-governing region of Denmark is generally going to be Greenland, just because it tends to come up in quizzes more often, and it's just so big on the map, even if it's not so big in reality. But a small archipelago on the other side of Iceland? That's the Faroe Islands. That's just worth having in mind. Denmark had the run of the North Atlantic for centuries before, the modern world happened. And their footprints are still visible on some of the less forgiving or less strategic places of land in the far north. Iceland itself has become a solid tourist destination and a popular place where weird northern things happen, but Greenland and the Faroes are still up there, just waiting for hipsters and influencers to find them. No doubt they will. See you tomorrow!